Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford are getting set for their third quarterback duel when it comes to Sunday night's primetime battle. But which quarterback is going to be able to do more on the field to pull out the victory? We're going to talk about it in this episode, folks, so stay tuned.
What are we? What makes us what we are and what we're going to be? It's grit. It's what we started with last year, guys. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and three toes. I will beat your ass.
Can definitely compete with the big dogs.
10, 5, end zone, touchdown, Detroit Lions.
You guys are unbelievable, man. I'm telling you.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions fans, and welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving on in. My friends, obviously we are getting closer and closer to when the actual game is going to be here, and I'm telling you what, I am very excited. I cannot wait for this game to actually start. But obviously, we still have to wait, which allows me to have more time to talk about stuff that relates to this game and various thoughts that I have about it. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the quarterbacks. We're going to talk about Goff and we're going to talk about Stafford. But we're going to talk about them in a different context than what I've normally talked about in the past. You see, when we talk about NFL football games, most NFL football games are won and lost by your ability to win matchups. And while every matchup is important, whether it's, offensive line versus defensive line, wide receiver versus cornerback, linebackers versus tight ends, whatever the hell kind of matchup you want to talk about, the most crucial one revolves around the quarterbacks. Now, I'm going to say this right now. I know for a fact that quarterbacks do not directly face each other, because I have heard this, been dropped in my comment section a couple of times now whenever I've talked about Goff and Stafford, and people are like, well, David, you know that Goff and Stafford don't face each other. Well, obviously I know that because there can only be one quarterback on the field at any given time. So obviously they do not ever see each other on the field actually facing off. But that's irrelevant when we're coming to this conversation. Because let's understand something. While the quarterbacks don't directly face off against each other and play against each other, their individual play in conjunction with their teammates has a massive impact upon how the opposing quarterback is going to then in turn be able to respond with his teammates. So while there is no direct interaction between the two quarterbacks on the field, how they play when they are on the field does have the potential to have a massive ability for how the quarterback on the sideline, as he is coming on the field, is going to then play in turn. And what do I mean by this? Well, let's understand something here. When it comes to the course of NFL history, us fans have had the ability to sit down and witness some of the best quarterback duelists of all time. What exactly am I referring to here? To all my lifelong football fans, you already kind of know where I'm going with this. I'm talking about quarterback duelists like, the duel of Bradshaw versus Staubach. I'm talking about Allen versus Mahomes, Kelly versus Marino, Brady versus Peyton Manning, Troy Aikman versus Steve Young. I mean, those right there, whenever those two quarterbacks are going to be playing in a game, it's always heightened up by the NFL. All the news outlets talk about it, and that is what is highly focused on for that particular week leading into the game. And there's a damn good reason for it. Those 5 matchups, which are not the only matchups that I could have put on this list, but those are the ones that a lot of people I know would be familiar with. Every single one of those matchups has high-profile football games attached to it. And I'm talking like conference championship games and or Super Bowls. We are talking about high-stakes football here. Like, hey, it's win or go home, and if you advance, you have the potential to either hoist a Lombardi trophy or to actually get to the game to play for the Lombardi trophy. We're talking about the pinnacle of football, and those matchups are often classic games. I mean, for crying out loud, you watch any NFL replay you want, I guarantee you, I would say 90% of these games are going to be on there, because it's the highest levels of football competition that there is in the NFL. And while those duels are all awesome, and they're all great for us fans to enjoy, I'm going to tell you this right now. There is one aspect that those duels cannot even touch. They can't hold a candle to when it comes to the duel between Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff. Now, I'm not talking about in terms of overall competitions that these two have been in, facing off in terms of teams and themselves against each other, because there's only been 2 of those, about to be 3. So what exactly am I talking about here? The Goff-Stafford situation, that we understand it, has not only taken a life of its own, but has already made never-before-done NFL history. Again, if you go back to the playoff game last year in the wild card round, that was the very first time ever in NFL history and NFL playoff history that both starting quarterbacks played their former teams and each other in the playoffs. That had never ever happened before. So that is pretty damn huge. And that right there already puts that matchup, that duel, if you will, in kind of a class of its own. Now, is it good enough to put into that conversation of the other ones that I mentioned? No, not yet. Obviously, Stafford and Goff would have to play a couple of more times in order for that to happen, which there's nothing that says that couldn't happen for the next couple of years. But when we take a look at the head-to-head matchups so far, the Goff-Stafford series is tied at 1 apiece. But when we take a look at the win that is associated for Stafford and the win that's associated for Goff, Stafford's win, it pales in comparison to Goff's, because Goff's win, oh, that's right, that was the Lions' first playoff win in 30-plus years. It was actually a postseason win, which, regardless of any team, that's massive. But then you have to consider how that game was won. And what I'm talking about is the last play that sealed the deal for that game. And considering the fact we only won by 1 point, pretty damn huge. It was a throw from Goff to Amon-Ra St. Brown for a first down, so that way the Lions could take their knees and run out the clock. Pretty damn huge. Because when you put all that together, that right there is much bigger than the regular season matchup that Matthew Stafford had against us back in 2001, when we were not a team that anybody thought anything of other than, you know what, we're just a scrappy bunch, but we're not going to win a whole lot. That's why I'm saying it doesn't even compare in the head-to-head matchup, just because of the sheer importance and significance of the game. But obviously, we're talking about the Lions versus Rams that are getting ready to face off against each other on Sunday night primetime. And that's to start the season, which, let's understand, that is a very prestigious honor in and of itself, because first and foremost, it's the first Sunday night primetime game of the season, and as we all know, or at least most of us should already know by now, the NFL only has one Sunday night primetime game every single week. That's pretty damn prestigious. That means the NFL is saying, hey, you guys are going to get the very first solo primetime game all to yourself. Other than, obviously the Thursday night primetime game that is, freaking the Ravens and the Chiefs. But Sunday night, I think, has always been bigger than Thursday night. That's just my personal opinion. And with the series tied, obviously, 1 apiece, whoever wins this game is going to obviously take the lead in the head-to-head series matchup. So that's pretty damn important. But the question, obviously, for here is which quarterback is going to make the most difference to help tip the scales for their team's favor? Well, when we take a look at it from that perspective, we first and foremost have to go to last year and take a look at how Goff and Stafford did last year. When we take a look at Jared Goff last year, he had just an absolutely spectacular season. He was 7th best in terms of completion percentage. He was 2nd best in passing yards, 4th best in passing touchdowns, 9th best in passer rating, and 11th best in QBR. Jared Goff easily had a top 10, almost top 5 season last year if you were to look at all the stats and around him together. So Jared Goff last year absolutely just had a, knock out of the ballpark season. Take a look at Matthew Stafford. Stafford had, I would say, above average numbers. It was a pretty good season, but it wasn't like Jared Goff level. He was 26th in terms of passing completion percentage, so that definitely was not good. But he was ranked 11th in passing yards. He was ranked 11th in passing touchdowns. He was ranked 15th in passer rating, but he was ranked 6th in QBR. So again, when you take a look at everything for Matthew Stafford last year, the statistical rankings are not exactly the most impressive. But what made Stafford's season last year so impressive was the fact that he was able to, in essence, help the Rams overachieve much more than what they were supposed to last year. Because many people did not have the Rams being a playoff team last year. But Stafford was able to help that team get them into the postseason to begin with, which was something nobody was expecting last year for the Rams. So obviously last year, both quarterbacks played pretty good. Obviously, Goff played a lot damn better than Stafford, but still, they both played pretty good. So when we put that in context, and now take a look at it to going into this game on Sunday night, we also have to take a look at the simple fact that ever since the trade has occurred, and I'm talking about going back to 2021, both quarterbacks have also produced, for the most part, roughly on the same level. Obviously, Goff has more passing yards. He has a couple more passing touchdowns. He has a higher passer rating. But at the base level, they're pretty much on the same, similar level, pretty much. There's not much difference. But that only pretty much is telling us that, hey, the physical talent and the physical capability for both quarterbacks is not really going to be a factor. They're still able to play at really high, levels. But what is a factor is those around them that they're going to use in this game. When we take a look at the Lions and the Rams offenses, kind of surprisingly, both quarterbacks have strong continuity when it comes to their units. But there is a gap when you take a look at what each quarterback has going into this game. And I've already I've already gone over this quite a bit in past episodes, so I'm going to kind of just skim over this. But when you take a look at Jared Goff, he has an improved offensive line from last year. He has Sam Laporta in this game. He has Amon-Ra St. Brown, and he has Jamison Williams, and he has Gibbs, and he has Monty. He has a very, very strong offensive unit. And every single player on that offensive unit, save one, was there last year. So that's pretty damn important. And what I'm referring to is Kevin Zeitler. Obviously, I'm not going to really include Josh Reynolds here because we still don't really know who his replacement is yet. We're going to assume that it's Khalif Raymond, but Khalif Raymond was here last year, so that's why it doesn't really matter. So when we take a look at Goff, he's sitting pretty fancy free right here. But when you take a look at Stafford, it's a little bit different. First and foremost, Stafford does not have his starting left tackle for this game due to suspension. His center, Jonah Jackson, most likely, is also injured, and the right tackle, at least according to reports I'm starting to hear right now, there's actually a somewhat decent chance he could miss this game. So now, the Rams could be without both of their starting tackles, which would really put them in a damn pickle. Obviously, of course, the Rams are going to have a contingency plan, but whatever that is, that's going to not even be the same as having, the starting tackles out there. Then, once you move past the offensive line for Stafford, he also now does not have Tyler Higbee out there because he's dealing with an injury. But what Stafford does have, he has a healthy Cooper Kupp, he has a healthy Puka Nacua. That's a pretty damn formidable duo. Then on top of that, in the backfield, he has Kyron Williams and he has Blake Corum. So, Matthew Stafford does have pieces here. It's not like he's going into this with nothing. But in comparison to Jared Goff, it's significantly less. And with the fact that the offensive line is getting reshuffled, is dealing with injury, that's not good. I don't care how anybody else wants to try and spin it about, how Sean McVay is going to somehow, be able to cover it up and do whatever wizardry he's going to do. When you start reshuffling the offensive line like this, especially against a defensive line like the Lions have, it's going to be a problem. So, when we take a look at it from that perspective, Goff clearly has the advantage in having better talent compared to Stafford in terms of the offensive line, in terms of the tight end, and also in terms of the running back room. Again, Gibbs and Monty are the best duo in the entirety of the NFL. And while Kyron Williams and Blake Corum are solid, again, keeping in mind here, the offensive line problem for the Rams, but also they're not Gibbs and Monty. Then we have to take a look at a second part of this. Home field advantage. Let's call it for what it is, folks. Ford Field has now become, I would say, one of the best home field advantages in the entirety of the NFL. And Lions fans, I can say this with pride for us. We know how to show out in droves, and on top of that, we are infectious when it comes to our energy. And we can be deafening, quite literally. Now, when it comes to the Rams, for guys like Matthew Stafford and Jonah Jackson who have played here, that really is not going to affect them too much. Obviously, they already know what to expect. But for guys that are brand new to the NFL or have not played in Detroit in, the last couple of years, that's a different story. Because that is going to have an effect. Because think about it. The Rams are going to have rookies like Joshua Carty, Brandon Fisk, Jared Verse, and a couple of others. This is their first NFL game. Pretty damn hostile environment to go into for your very first NFL game. But then on top of that, because of the stakes, that home field advantage is going to be even bigger. And when you think about the home field advantage for Goff and the Lions, it's extremely huge because, one, our team always plays immensely better at home. Like, it's not even a contest. Over the last 2 years, when we have been at home, we have been lights out in terms of our ability to perform, which has helped us to have a pretty solid record at home. So, everything I'm talking about here points to Jared Goff having an extremely strong case for having the ability to pull out this win and be able to pull it out with a convincing manner. But what makes this an epic quarterback duel, at least in this sense, is that, that's right, us Lions fans know that when it comes to Matthew Stafford, the guy is he has the ability to be a comeback kid. His ability to make comebacks happen is absolutely ridiculous. It is his secret weapon. So obviously, any game with Stafford in it, you can't count him out. But is that all that makes this an epic quarterback duel? No. There's actually more that goes into it than just that. Because while we could talk about all of the plays and everything and, talent and units and everything else, what's going and what has had made this, story much bigger than what it is and more important than what it is the significant backstories and drama and everything else that's fueling this matchup. And again, that's talking about everything that's happened up until this point, which is the high-profile trade status of obviously Stafford and Goff. Obviously the fact that, hey, a lot of people look at this trade as a win-win status for the Lions and the Rams. Hey, Rams got their Super Bowl. The Lions had the ability to build their Super Bowl team. Jared Goff got to a place that actually wanted him, resurrected his career, so hey, win-win. Then there's the McVay controversy about how he and Goff did not have a great ending to their relationship and how he fueled and pretty much put into motion trying to destroy Jared Goff. And then finally, There's all the personal drama outside of that drama that's happened, such as the Kelly Stafford incidences, obviously what Matthew Stafford has said, in the months after the freaking playoff loss. There's a lot of stuff that goes into all this that is not necessarily related to the actual football game itself and to the actual talent of the players or the damn quarterbacks. But it makes it all epic none the same, because all of that is being put into this massive mixing pot to make this story. So, here's why I'm going to say what I'm about to say right now. I can think of no other quarterback duel in the entirety of NFL history that even comes close to the personal investment of what is Goff versus Stafford. Because think about it, folks. We've had quarterbacks that have been traded to other teams and all this other stuff in the past, and it's like, oh, hey, they might come back and play each other or whatever else. But we've never really had a situation like the Goff versus Stafford situation. It's a unique one all of itself, and in the NFL, when you have something that's unique like this, it definitely stands out like a sore thumb. And because of that, I can also say that there has never been such an involvement when it comes to the fan bases and the organizations basing conversations and or arguments comparing these two quarterbacks, especially their career paths ever since the damn trade happened. And that's why they've been on separate teams, and then when they've back come together when they've played against each other. So to me, because of the very deep emotional investiture that, the fans have and that obviously the media has, and I would also say the NFL, because they recognize a good plot, they recognize a good story when they see it, and all of the dramatic overanalyzation that has gone into everything that's happened ever since the trade, and obviously, especially within the last couple of months, related to Goff and Stafford, the Lions and the Rams, for me, that's what makes this an epic quarterback duel. And when you look at it in that perspective versus all the other stuff that I said at the very beginning, that makes this game ridiculously huge and important outside of just the basic stuff like, oh yeah, it's a Sunday night primetime game, it's the opening game of the season for both teams. There's a lot of other stuff that's going into this, and that's what makes this game so damn important and huge, not only to the teams themselves, but to the quarterbacks. And I guarantee you, they all know it. They're not stupid, folks. They know exactly what's going on here, and they know exactly what they're playing for. They're not only playing for themselves as teammates, but they're playing for their quarterbacks. And that's exactly what's going on here. That's why this is going to be, I think, a very fierce competition between the two quarterbacks. And whoever's able to make the most of it on the field Sunday night, I think is going to be a huge reason why whichever team wins. And in my honest opinion, I think it's going to be the Lions. And I think it's probably going to be a significant spread, in my opinion. But again, that's my opinion. But having said that, I think I've done a pretty good job of explaining my viewpoint, putting it out there, so I'm going to end the episode and say thank you all for watching in another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. But I also encourage y'all to do one of these three things: like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. If by chance you subscribed in the past and you forgot to do so at the time, or you just subscribed, you not had a chance to do so, again, I want to highly encourage y'all to subscribe. But I also want to encourage y'all to do this. Please, make sure you hit that bell notification icon as well, so that way you guys never miss any more content that I push out. I also want to highly encourage y'all, please, to share this content with your Lions friends and family members. Again, the more we can share it, the greater the channel grows and spreads. And that helps, especially sharing it to your Lions friends and family members. Whether you share it on YouTube, whether you share it on Twitter, whether you share it on Facebook, the more we can share it, the better we're able to bring in new people to watch the show, and also help it spread on not only YouTube, but other platforms. So please share it as much as you possibly can. And with that being said to everybody, I hope you all enjoyed the content, and whether you've been here for the very first time or you've been here as a loyal viewer for quite a while, I hope you all are having a great day. I hope you all got something that makes you happy, makes you smile. God bless, my friends. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.